Hello, welcome to part number 2 of our series on essay construction. So in our first series, what we were looking at is the things that do change from essay to essay. So every single essay you do, it's going to change in these different ways. We were looking at how an essay changes based on its prompt, and because it changes on its prompt, it needs to change its contention, and because it changes its contention, it needs to change its arguments, which reveal itself in our paragraphs. So today what we're looking at is how we can take these ideas basically and apply them to a structure that's recognizable and makes it easy for people to digest those ideas. We're looking at our introductions, we're looking at our paragraphs, and we're also looking at our conclusions. So let's get right into it. All right, welcome back to the graph. So, 2 parts, things that do change from essay to essay. Your prompt, your contention, your arguments. These are basically your ideas, right? But on the other hand, we're going to look at that familiar structure that everyone's trying to tell you about, but can be kind of difficult and elusive unless someone like me comes along and tells you exactly what it means. So, the introduction is the first part of our structure that we really need to nail. So, what exactly is an introduction? Well, we look at the root word. What is the root word of introduction? It's introduce. What is the role of the introduction? The role of the introduction is to introduce. The place that trips people up is what exactly does the introduction introduce? You know, I've seen a lot of essays in my day, I'm 20. I've seen a lot of essays, and people try to wing it, basically. Talk a bit about the essay and talk a bit about the arguments, and I went too far into the arguments. It sounds like a paragraph, and it's not very structured. I've actually devised a way that makes it absolutely foolproof every single time to do an introduction. Because that's what my course is. It's just a string of essays. Your introduction needs to introduce at least 3 things, okay? And if you have these 3 things, I think you're pretty set. These 3 things and no more, okay? So it needs to introduce the prompt, okay? Because the prompt is the question, right? So if let's say you're talking about zoos, okay? And you go straight into your contention, I think that zoos are terrible, and I think we should close them, and da-da-da-da, and you haven't explained what the question was. You haven't explained that this essay is dealing with the contentious question of whether zoos should be closed, and this is what I think about it. Then it's kind of random. It's like you've dived right into what you're trying to say about a question that you haven't introduced. So we introduce the question, and then we try to answer it, and that's when you can go out and say, I don't think that zoos are permissible, but you've introduced the question, so that makes sense at least. Then, when we've introduced the contention, we can go about the business of introducing our arguments, okay? So how many arguments do we have in a piece, essay? Well, if you're doing high school, you would need at least 3, Less than 3, you've done too little. More than 3, I'm afraid that you would have stretched your arguments too far. Okay, but a good hint for explaining your arguments without going into too much detail is what I like to call, and I think I'll write it here, post-noting. Now this is a skill. This is a skill. Basically, what post-noting is it's saying very explicitly, very clearly, this is what I am going to say per paragraph. I literally write in my essays, my first paragraph is going to talk about this. My second paragraph is going to talk about this, and my third paragraph is going to talk about this. If you post-note, and you only put 1 to 2 sentences in your introduction as to what each argument is about, you cannot go wrong unless you somehow mess up your arguments or something like that. It's really that easy. So if you want me to go into more detail about that, just shoot me a comment or write me a message or something, and I'll definitely get around to it. The second part is your paragraphs. Are your paragraphs, sorry. Now, your paragraphs are easy when you think about it like this. Your paragraphs are there to get your arguments across. So remember we were talking about how important our arguments are in writing an essay, okay? We have a contention, but whether or not your contention is a good one really doesn't depend on the contention itself, but depends on how well you can justify it using arguments, using logic, using reasons, statistics, quotations. If you're doing a text, you're using quotes, you're using scenes, those kind of things. This is where all of that just comes together and really solidifies itself so that you can say stuff that justifies your contention. So the general rule of thumb is that when you have one paragraph, you're really saying one argument. Remember this, one paragraph is one argument, okay? Any more than one argument and you've done it wrong, okay? That's what a paragraph is. That's why it's a separation from all other paragraphs. If you put more than one argument in a paragraph, that just means that you need more than one paragraph, okay? Because that's what the paragraph's there for. If you're looking for a structure of paragraphs, and we can make a video of this if you want, just remember to comment it. This is the general structure that they teach in school. I actually think it's okay, right? I have a different structure, which I'll teach right after this. But what does teal represent? Topic sentence. Okay, so you know what a topic sentence is? It's, your very first sentence in the paragraph, and it's saying, this is what my one argument is, right? This is what I'm saying in the paragraph. Evidence, okay, or explanation. It could be evidence or explanation. You could swap these around, but we'll start with evidence. So evidence is, if you're doing a text, it would be something like a quote. It would be something like a character exposition. It would be perhaps clothing if you're doing a play, stage directions, or whatever. Basically, evidence is the meat and bone, the full half of your paragraph, right? It's the way that you justify yourself. Your explanation is explaining why the evidence is significant, right? So we have the evidence, but why is it significant? You don't know until you explain it. So you can't just chuck out a quote there and just leave it by itself and expect it to work its magic. You have to put the quote out there and say, well, this quote is here. This is what the author meant. This is what I think it means. You're explaining why the stuff you put out there is significant. You can take a statistic. You put a statistic out there. You're talking about motorcycle deaths on the road, and you say, this is how many people died on the road from motorcycle accidents. Well, that's all well and good until you say, what this means is that we should reduce the amount of the motorcycles sold. We should increase the strictness on motorcycle license restrictions or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I hope that makes sense. Link. Now the link sentence is what I find most contentious, because the link sentence, when they teach in school, basically means that you're taking paragraph 2 and you're linking it to paragraph 3. The problem I find with this is that, well, it's not really a problem, it's actually okay if your paragraphs link. The problem I find in that regard is that some paragraphs just don't link. Some paragraphs are just different from each other, and they shouldn't be made to link. What I like to replace this with is, I guess we can put R here. So this is my thing. Tier. This means reaffirmation. You know what affirmation is? It means to agree with something, right? So when I say reaffirmation, it means that once we've done our topic sentence, our evidence, our explanation, we are basically just repeating or consolidating everything that we've said in the paragraph before to make it clearer to the reader, okay? That is the basic structure of a paragraph. And I just wanted to teach you one thing, okay? I'm going to go through this more, but I'm just going to chuck it out there for free. If you can read this, it says claim, and this is evidence. I do philosophy as a discipline, as a major, And this is basically what's carrying me through philosophy. Because in philosophy, when you're dealing with all these difficult arguments and stuff, if you get this structure, it makes it so much easier. We have claims and we have evidence, okay? Claims can be anything like the sky is blue, this whiteboard is white, I'm talking to a camera. But unless you have evidence to back it up, it means nothing, right? So when we translate this to school essays, what this sounds like is you can say something like, we should ban zoos, okay? But if you just chuck it out there, it means nothing. Unless you say, we should ban zoos because the conditions are terrible. That's your evidence, okay? So it also works backwards. You can say, the conditions of zoos are terrible, but remember, if we have evidence without an explanation, it means nothing as well. The conditions of zoos are terrible, so we should ban them. If you miss out one of these, then you have you've done something wrong. And I guarantee that your teachers will pull you up on it. So get this right. Whenever you make a claim, have the evidence alongside it. Whenever you have evidence, make sure you're making a claim. Okay? Now, we can wrap this up. Conclusion. Conclusion has the same problem as introduction. People don't know what it actually does. But remember, what's the root word of our conclusion? Well, the root word is conclude. The root verb. We're trying to conclude something, okay? What are we concluding something about? Well, we're concluding something about the topic, all right? So once again, we come back to this three-part structure. Your conclusion should follow something of this structure. You start with your topic. This is what we were talking about today. This is what I had to say about that topic. That's your contention. And this is how I justified myself. You know what? I would almost do the same thing for a conclusion that I would for an introduction, okay? Except, you're not doing an introduction. An introduction has the tone of introducing. A conclusion should have a tone of concluding. Now that you have all the information, that you have we can call them an experiment. We've done an experiment on the topic. We can come to a reasoned conclusion about it. You're closing it up, you know? So I'll leave you with this example. And I'll put it this way. I'll leave you with this example. Your essay is an experiment, like a scientific experiment, okay? Let's say you were trying to investigate some kind of phenomenon, all right? Why do sunflowers grow in autumn? Okay, why do sunflowers grow in autumn? Well, that's a topic, okay? That's the question. You know, why do they grow in autumn? They grow in autumn, but we want to know why. We don't know why. Your contention will come out and say, well, it's kind of like a hypothesis, right? I think that sunflowers grow in autumn because the heat, I have terrible times. The heat stimulates their nerves or something, okay? That's what I think happens. However, then we have to do the business of every scientist, and that is to do some experiments. So we go out into the field, we look at the sunflowers, we measure them, we see their temperature, we take some and put it into a contained environment and we watch it for hours and whatever. But eventually, we're going to come up with some results. So from these experiments, we're going to be able to say things like, the reason why sunflowers grow in summer is because, you know, the heat generates energy or something and it stimulates their nerves and it makes the sunflowers grow. But basically what that means is that our hypothesis, our contention, has been confirmed, okay? So what we do with our conclusion is basically we say, okay, we've done the experiment, so we've done our arguments, right? We've confirmed our contention. So I think we should close zoos since the conditions are just so terrible. And that's what I think about this topic. We should close zoos because the conditions are so terrible. I don't have anything against zoos. I love zoos. But I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So basically, we're closing the question of whether we should have zoos or not. And once you do that, that is a pretty good essay. Okay? Well, thanks for watching this series on essay construction. I hope it was helpful to you. And I would like to just reassure you that everything that I've taught to you today works. It's not just me, making stuff up. I write essays all of the time. It's literally my bread and butter. It's what I do. And this structure works. But obviously, I didn't go into too much detail on particular bits. I would love to make a video just for paragraphs to really guide people through that and how I would write a paragraph. But if you did like the video, or if you did want to request me to do a video, please leave a comment in the comment section, and also like the video and subscribe if you want to watch videos similar to this one. So thanks for watching. Only, hidden